Bart Mroz in the
What's up,
building.
brother?
Bart, how you doing, my friend?
Good, good. Hanging and hanging,
Hanging,
hanging.
hanging out, hanging loose, staying loose.
Yeah, yeah.
How's everything going out there in Philly,
Good.
in the city of
I
brotherly
mean,
love?
it's doing. It's an interesting time for everybody, I guess. Everybody's kind of
Yeah,
trying to survive, basically.
yeah.
Uh,
I know we were talking a little bit about restaurants and stuff like that before we started recording. Is uh is like are things starting to open up over there? Are things still pretty locked down
Pretty
overall?
locked down in the city itself.
Are schools open?
No, not yet. It's still
Okay.
virtual. We're thinking about it. Restaurants are a little bit of open. Obviously, outdoor dining is happening, and I think they're just doing
Hmm.
25% indoors. Obviously, it gets cold
Hmm.
here soon enough, so they're gonna have to figure out what to do with that. But there's restaurants went out of business. A whole bunch of them just went out of business. Because you just
It's
can't
horrible,
survive it.
man.
Unfortunately, even with outdoor dining or percentages of what you can do, it's not gonna fly. Restaurants work on such a small margin. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
They got hit really, really hard
yeah.
with this.
It's brutal. Do you know any restaurant owners
Hmm.
or people in the
Yeah,
business
yeah,
directly
I know
that,
a lot of them.
yeah, it sucks, man. Do you?
Yeah, it's not. It's
What are they
tricky.
doing? Are they figuring other things out?
Everybody's trying to figure out. I think some of the places that kind of will survive and had survived is like the small pizza shops that you don't really do indoors. People who deliver for the most part,
A lot of delivery and
a lot of
stuff. Yeah,
delivery. So you definitely get a lot of those. But sit down restaurants, forget it. Like, what are you gonna do? You know,
yeah, yeah.
unfortunately.
I feel like the future is like food trucks that can deliver, that can move around, deliver real easily, and can also like set up shop and have like a cool, place with like benches where people can kind of like
As long as, yeah, I mean,
sit
even,
down and
yeah,
eat,
I mean, food trucks, I think, could win on this, if you do it well. But yeah, inside restaurants, I mean, we have at least a year of this. Oh,
Right, right. It's everybody everybody wanted to think like, hey, this is just going to be a few months or what like, and it's
nope.
just it's going so much longer than
Yeah,
anybody,
you basically
would
have
have
to be
wanted it
prepped
to.
for at least the year, and then what's the recovery looks like?
Yeah,
Like at least a year of this, so you're gonna go even farther in, and then what's next? The next few years are just gonna be see what
yeah,
happens. I mean, try to survive it
yeah.
all.
We'll probably all be living inside of pods underground within like within a
I
few
mean,
years.
to me, it's just if people do look at sort of wearing masks and cleaning and all that stuff, I mean, we should be okay. It's
Yeah,
just a struggle.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge benefit to just having gone through this. Like a lot of the Asian countries already have been through this and have gotten familiar with masks and have just kind of gone through the
Hmm.
process already with like swine flu and H1N1. So hopefully if something like this does, for additional waves, hopefully everybody's just ready to kick into gear right
Yeah, I
away,
mean, flu season is coming. Same thing. Um,
Yeah,
it's all those things, and you try to kind of go, well, have a happy face, try to move forward, but this is just scary and it's out there.
yeah,
So
it's brutal. How's COVID going for your team, remote work in the time of COVID, all
we
that kind of stuff? You guys are already a pretty remote team and
for the most
everything,
part,
right?
yeah, we're like 80% remote. But we also work with a lot of clients long term. So for us, didn't really it did and it didn't change. Most of our team here was in the same office, which I'm sitting at now. Um,
Hmm.
but which we love and it's great. We love this office, but keeping them safe and not coming in and being remote. So we just kind of got used to it. It's fine. Um, it's
Oh, so you did have a lot of people in the Philly
Yeah, pretty much
office
the whole
then.
team in US is here, um,
Oh, okay.
which I miss them dearly because it was always fun. You kind of go a little nutty sometimes working by yourself. Um,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a bit tricky. But
Have you guys? Yeah.
for us, it's kind of been, yeah.
I
I
was
mean,
just
for us,
gonna.
it's been okay. I mean, we kind of got in a groove of things and doing our thing.
Have you found anything to do to kind of help people stay connected, like socialize, like
So
um
we don't do that. We do and we don't. We have a weekly full on hands, but the thing is, most of these guys are on phone calls or with clients or online with production and stuff like that every day, all day long. So it doesn't really, it doesn't change anything we wouldn't do here. Um, the only thing
mhm,
we don't do together now is just go to lunch. But other than that, they're kind of making their own way of things and they always talk every day, all day long anyway. So it hasn't really,
just figuring it
yeah, it
out.
hasn't changed. We didn't have to do too much of that. And I think because the way they work, like with some of them have kids at home, so they got to adjust that too. I think forcing that is not, we just either it comes natural to everybody or you're gonna force it. Culture's different.
Yeah.
Plus we all worked together for so many years. We kind of know each other really, really well, so it's kind of
Mm,
it's different. My business partner and I, we catch up every single day for at least 15 minutes of what's up, what's going on, just to make sure today. But we
yeah.
also talk all day on Slack. Like for us, it's such a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have been podcasting for a while now. I think 3 years with the
Oh,
e-commerce minute.
that's like my whatever. I mean,
Um,
I've been podcasting forever and ever and ever and ever.
yeah. And then you got the In the Ring
Mm-hmm.
podcast for Sumo
Yep.
Heavy. So how do you like the podcasting game? And how do you balance out that time commitment with running the business and everything?
Um, so I love podcasts. They're great. Um, you just chat, which is awesome. Prefer the interview style ones where we interview because they don't have to say much. Um, e-commerce minute just came about because Anchor came out and we are just playing with it and we're like, oh, we need something to put out there, and it just happened to be a very sure thing. John and I did it really quickly. It was easy. It turned into a lot more production work. We did something like,
It's the production work that like kills
well, we
you,
started writing the stories a lot
Like,
longer, and then they just like that read, and then you got to talk about it. And then at some point, like he was writing it, and
yeah,
then we had a junior person helping us, and they were just writing it. And basically, at some point, I was only spending the half an hour that we record every single week for it, so that was easy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
me, for them, it was like then you have to do all the socials and put it out there, and it was good. But after 3 years, 760 or 80 episodes, or whatever that was,
Hmm.
it runs its course. It definitely runs its course because it got boring. In the way of like, well, no, it did because you did it like in one story after another, and at some point you see it, it's great. But so part of that is we just got burned out on it. Part of it is we're trying to adjust what we, from a market perspective, what we're pushing out there and what we want to go after.
Hmm.
We actually took the time a little bit because of all this, changing our sort of what we do a little bit, in a meaning
Hmm.
of how we position ourselves in the market and how we do it. So
Okay.
that means we have to change a little bit of our marketing, how we strategize on it. So Inner Ring is becoming more of that than anything else. So it's still like finding its way, but we're streaming it now when we do it for the most part, which is awesome, and then recording it and just turning it into a podcast. But the commitment to it is a little less, and we just needed a break from it.
So when you're saying that like you've repositioned yourselves, you're talking about
Hmm.
Heavy as the agency. You've sort of repositioned what services you're offering,
It,
and so your
yeah.
content
I mean, it's
is.
not really the services; it's just fine tuning what we do. We're not. We don't do marketing. We don't do SEO. We don't just take on a Shopify site, design it and build it and hand it over. That's not us. Um, our strategy
Mhm.
is really we help clients have the best possible e-commerce team, and that's through tech. That's through um, business process, technology process, really teaching you how to do proper things. So there's a lot more built into that. and trying to
Mm,
get there, is different than just being, oh, we build a site and here you go, or we market your products or whatever else.
mm.
So
So was it that the e-commerce minute content was more like broad and you're trying to
yeah,
narrow it
yeah,
down a
yeah.
little bit?
So it was definitely broad. Definitely want to narrow it down a lot more.
I would listen to actually for I don't know, like something happened and I got a new phone and so I wasn't
Yeah.
subscribed, but I would listen to it like for
Every
like I don't
morning.
know, a few months. I'd listen to it a lot actually. I would
We
dig it.
the funny thing is like,
I like the quick
yeah, the
format.
funny thing is as soon as if there was a break in like a week break, people would email us. We're like, where is it? You guys okay? What's going on with it? All the time. So this when we like stopped, people were just like, what is happening? I'm like, "Yeah, just need a break.
Uh
Definitely need a break from it.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. You know, it's funny, like my podcast, Mage Talk, the Magento one, I kind of feel in some ways like it ran its course a
Yeah.
little bit. I kind of have that feeling as well. And, now I'm doing a lot of interviews, but they're different. They're not just Magento specific. They're kind of all over the place. Like I want to talk with you about like networking. Like I'm huge
Hmm.
into, networking and stuff or, or whatever. Like, so I'm kind of in a way broadening up a little bit and then trying to tie things back into e-commerce, and the audience that I have and stuff. But I totally understand that,
Yeah.
when something kind of runs its
It
course.
does. And we definitely
Um,
have that moment of like, all right, we're done.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I scoured your LinkedIn recently to find some topics, and I noticed you were posting about networking, and I realized I was like, you know what? Bart is one of the better networkers I know,
Thanks.
and I feel like that's one of your strengths. And I'm a fan of networking, so I want to ask you, like, what is your overall philosophy? What's your playbook on networking? What do you do digitally? What do you do in person?
I
What's the playbook?
I know this is gonna be a silly, but like empathy and just being curious, I think is always the good thing,
I think that's
right?
huge. I think that's huge, actually.
Curiosity for me. Like I like taking call. Like we've talked about Lunch Club. It is one of my favorite things. It's like this structure thing that happens once a week, and you can just
I
I love
love
it.
that.
Just talking to people all over the place, and I've met some awesome people, and it's great. Shaper is one of those things that happened too. Um, you know,
What's
it
Shaper?
was it's still around. It's like a networking, like a match networking thing. Like imagine kind of like
Okay,
Tinder, but for networking. Um,
gotcha. Oh,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
remember
it's still
that. I
around,
remember that
still good.
actually. Yeah,
Bumble has one too, which is really weird why it's
yeah.
built into one app, which I had to go
Bumble is a weird one. So Bumble has a three
right.
modes. It has a dating,
Friends,
a BFF, and a business. And I tried the BFF one because I was like, I got to meet some friends out here in Austin, and then I quickly gave up on it.
So my favorite
it's
one
so
was though I was
it's
like
so weird.
to my wife I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna have Bumble on my phone, but it's the networking one." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Here,
Just to be
right,
clear.
just to be clear, I'd have to like here look that this is the modes just to be clear. So if you see
Yeah,
Bumble, I'm
yeah,
not doing anything. It's just
yeah.
telling you." Which was
And like whenever you see like any ad for Bumble, it's always the dating
right,
side that they
right.
show in the
And I'm like,
ads, right? So
they
your
should
wife's
have
gonna
they
see an
should have
ad and
like
she's gonna
divided them up. It was just a weird point.
separate product or
Yeah.
something. Like, but I do think that matchmaking is needed in all of those different places. Like I think the idea of
Yeah.
matchmaking for
Hmm.
business partners, for co-founder, like there's a billion matchmaking
Yeah, I
programs that
think
are all,
for me, Lunch Club probably is one of the best at what they're doing because you can kind of choose
yeah,
what the twist.
it's well
Well
executed.
executed,
Yep.
very simple interface, which is awesome. So I like that, and I met really cool people. But it's the same thing. Like you basically take your physical when you used to go to conferences and stuff like that. You just take that and twist it into remote. You don't have to go anywhere. It's there. You just have a conversation with somebody. I think you can do it. But just don't forget that they're still people. As long as you act like not a robot, basically. If we're
Right.
having a conversation, like most of my conversation, let's go like literally this. We just chat. And
Right. Right.
I did the
Right.
whole conversations with friends for a bit in the beginning of all this, and that was the same thing. Like you just
Right.
chat. So my whole
Right.
networking, like
Right.
you got to look at different things. Obviously, it's easier to talk to people that you've met in real life really quickly. And like I talk to you all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's just easy.
Yeah.
Trying to have a
Yeah.
conversation with somebody that you met just online and getting people used to it is a little harder. Um,
Yeah. There's more friction to overcome to kind of build that rapport.
Right. I think people who have friendships on like Twitter and Instagram just kind of go back and forth. That changes a little bit.
Yeah.
But going
Yeah.
from a video conversation to actually making a friendship is a little harder to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I actually really love your answer because like people who like put like I'm a networker in their bio are like the worst networkers, right? Because it's all
Well,
sales.
it's the
They're just
guy
trying to
who
sell
right,
someone
it's the guy who
directly.
goes to a networking event with a whole bunch of business cards and
Let's
just
network.
hands them out, right? You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like I had this happen. Like it's
Yeah.
funny. It keeps back that we were at a club thing. I brought my wife to a networking event with me, and we're just kind of sitting and actually chatting with person. And like my strategy for networking events was always if I had one good conversation with somebody, that was worth it for me. I'm good. Like I don't have to
Totally.
run around the whole
Totally.
room, right? For me, one good conversation with a new
Totally.
person is perfect. That's my
Totally.
winner. That's
Right.
literally has been always been my
Because
number.
then you can be laid back.
Hmm.
Then you can be laid back when you're there, and you're not in. Because some you meet people, and they're kind of like they're tense or they're very like overly strategic. Like if they've been talking to you for seven
They're like
minutes
start
and you're
guarding,
not
right? Right?
obviously, yeah, like if you're not obviously a lead to them, they start look. You see their eyes starting to, and it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a human connection.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
it's you gotta. People make it so transactional, right? It's like I walk in and
right.
I need to know what you're gonna do for me. That's totally different, right?
Right.
Like for me,
Right.
I can trace our largest client, our three largest client, to a guy I met 14 years ago at a networking event. Like I'm not
Nice.
kidding. Like I can trace it to where that came from, right? And that's
Right.
and because we had headed off it was a technology thing. He was a brand new company, had a new recruiting company. Now they're like pretty big in Philly, but um, it's interesting how people dart all over a place, and it's like have a conversation. Like
Yeah.
you and I had conversations in conferences for a very long
Yeah.
time. You know what I mean? Hours
Yeah.
on end.
Yeah.
But that's what you
Yeah.
bring in, right? You meet some good people, and then you just have a conversation. So like at this event, I'm sitting there with my wife and we're talking to somebody, and this guy just walks in and he's like, "Hi, hi, what do you do? What do you do? Here's my." I'm like, "Stop." Just and I was just not having it, and I'm like, "Go away."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's like Zoom bombing basically. It's like, how are you? What's going on? It's like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like it makes you like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
a real conversation with
I
somebody.
think,
And I think
yeah.
the other thing is like people have those kind of people want to find, the top of the top. They don't want to talk to you. Like that's not,
Right.
my strategy is always like a little more laid back at a thing or just like picking out the people who are standing in the corner or just really laid
Yeah.
back or standing by the bar and just like hang out and like there's whole those
Dude,
kind of
I've,
things.
I've, I've literally had a scenario where I saw somebody, they didn't know me at all, or they didn't know they had a platform, anything like that, and their attitude towards me was like they just sort of brushed me
Hmm.
off. And like that was like several years ago, and to this day I don't know if I'm proud to say I hold a grudge, but it's not necessarily that I hold a grudge, it's more so that I see them as the type of person who only sort of cares more about status than about human
Yep.
beings. And I'm not saying this I hold a grudge, but it's just it affects the way I see. Whereas the person who's going to be kind is going to be attentive, is going to care, even if you're nobody or just a regular Joe. Like that's the type of person people are going to like. That's the type of person people are going to want to do business with. People are going to trust.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that happen
Um,
in the community. We're kind of in.
Everybody's had that
We
happen.
we've had that
Like,
happen
you
in our
know,
community too, and it's like, all right, well, guess that's we can walk away now. Um,
Right. So how has now that I'm thinking about it, like I think last time we talked, you were saying that you were doing a lot of in-person things to network,
mhm.
like in the city and things like that. Has that changed a lot for you? Did you used to do a good amount of in-person
Mhm.
networking events and stuff, and then has
Oh
that
yeah,
changed a
it changed
lot
a lot, and
in
it
COVID?
has been a little bit of a struggle for me on personal side because it's I'm so used to it. The weird part of it is at the end of last year, I was like, I don't want to travel to conferences anymore. Um,
Right.
this year, and I went to
So that was before
before
COVID
COVID.
hit.
So
You
yeah, I was like,
decided you
there's
didn't
I'm
want to
not
travel.
going to go to big conferences anymore. Um, mhm.
Really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I was not going to go to anything. Anything big.
Really?
Like
Okay.
anything like the Adobe stuff or like anything big, I was not going. I was done. Um,
Just done with the whole, just
yeah, because
all
think about
the
it, like in our
rigmarole of,
world, you're basically traveling from end of January through May.
hmm
Look at all the conferences that go on. For us, for the e-commerce world, you're doing that travel nonstop. And there's like things that are back to
yeah,
back. I mean, there's one
yeah,
year when I was in Vegas 6 times by the time April hit. You know, at some point, that's just no. you
yeah,
get you
yeah.
get kind of burnt out. So my strategy was doing smaller stuff, doing our own things, doing dinners, doing like very different, very strategic, which started to be great. And then I went to two different conferences just for me. It's more of for my own education, and that was it. Um, and then everything hit the fan. So you got to kind of
Interesting.
change. The thought was the way I look at networking is the same. It just changes um, from this to from personal to this. And the funny thing is, we were
Mm,
just talking about somebody who is that salesy person is not going to win this. You have to have patience. You have to
mm-hmm,
have it's a long process a lot of times and getting there,
mm-hmm,
which is it
mm-hmm,
happens. Personally, for me, is like it's just more in getting your head in the game and trying to figure that out.
mm-hmm,
I'm just
mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, I'm not traveling nonstop. And I have all this time, and like, what am I doing?
Mm. Everybody's having to do, I mean, it's funny because I'm like more of that developer type
Mhm.
personality. I think of a lot of developers, but as a salesperson, like this has to be actually like uniquely difficult for now you had already decided to not do in-person stuff, but still
It
like
is.
it's got to be uniquely
Yeah,
difficult
the
for salespeople.
introverted in me is going, oh my God, what am like? I need people around, and I'm like kind of person like I love cities because I need people around me.
Just
Just
the
the energy,
energy of
people
just
like
people all over
right.
the place.
Which is why I love New York or Philly. I mean New York especially,
Yeah,
because it's nutty. And not everybody does, but because of that, it's energy of people. Um,
yeah,
but um, you just kind of got to figure that out. Because the not the introvert, the extroverts, salespeople is a little tough. But you figure out
hmm
the things you got to do. For me, it's more of I'm not the sales. I don't do only sales. I do the business stuff. There's lots going on all the time. You got,
okay.
you used to,
A lot of business
a lot of
administration type
business stuff.
stuff.
You're still an HR person basically for everybody,
Gotcha.
or everybody okay. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in the company that just people don't even see. Contracts. I mean, I spend most of my day today literally going back and forth contracts, spending time on the phone with attorneys. Like, there's all
Okay.
those things, all
All
the
the
fun
fun
stuff, right?
stuff.
I get to get left with all the fun stuff, right? It's always about the money and the contracts, and that's what I do, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's I'm okay with that because I have an amazing team that takes care of everything else. Our production is awesome, marketing team is great. Like all those things just
Mhm.
kind of worked itself great, and it's been all right. But I still gotta bring clients in. So and
Yeah.
it's a chase, it's
The
just figuring out that fun chase of it's a sport.
mhm. The dinners that you mentioned, I remember Gary Vee talking about a strategy related to
hmm
setting up dinners and things like that. How are you approaching
That's
that? Is it
not
just
it's
informal?
well. It's supposed to be informal,
Just
and no longer that.
gotcha.
You're definitely not doing them because you can't go anywhere. At some
Right.
point,
Right.
hopefully, we can do them again.
So did you pretty much, is that the idea with Lunch Club, is that you're sort of putting your like networking time directly into Lunch Club
Um,
to
it's
make
kind
people
of Lunch Club for me is more of forcing me to make sure I actually do at least one new person a week. That's the
Mhm.
force, like that's forcing me to it. Um, it's
Right.
scheduled, it's there, like it's forcing me to actually talk to one new person a week
At
at
a
a minimum.
minimum kind
Yeah,
of a
at a
thing.
minimum. Because sometimes you just get wrapped up into things. I can tell you, like it's
Right.
Thursday, and I've been wrapped up in contract world for multiple things for past 3 days. So,
Yeah.
um, so at some point, and
I
plus,
see the look of joy on your
well,
face
it is what it
about
is. Like, don't
that.
get me wrong, and this is all good things, but it's also the first of the month. Like the way we bill, it's like you got to go through payroll and all the stuff you do at the end of the month,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of those kind of things you get wrapped up. And if I haven't done, like, if I own like that, so Monday or Tuesday, whatever they do, if I hadn't like put that in there as like, oh, schedule something for me, then Friday comes and I'm like, great, what now? Um,
Hmm.
so that's just forcible. And then just being aware.
Got
It's
it.
funny we're just talking about this because I've been struggling like in the past few weeks of, I have this like remorse. I was like, oh my God. So my job is to bring clients in. So I gotta talk to people,
Right.
network, do all those things, and then do the business stuff. But
Right.
I'm like, but wait a minute, am I? I've been going back and forth. Like, am I actually doing this? Like, why am I like all these people are like all the production's happening? Like, but I need to do this, and it's like I don't know why. I think the connection between like I used to fly everywhere or have meetings or stuff like that, like hasn't really fully translated
Translated
into this world yet
into
in my head.
remote. Yeah.
And it's
Hmm.
fine. It is what it is, and
It's taking everybody
it's taking
time
everybody
to
out,
make the
right?
transition in different ways. Yeah.
Because we used to travel so much, you know what I mean, and meetings. And I've had,
Right.
when I moved back to Philly, my networking at night changed a little bit. It slowed down, which is awesome.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
used to be able to be home at a decent hour, have dinner with the wife. Like that changed when in New York. I mean, day starts at 6 a.m. and you're doing 4 night events and you're coming home at 11, like that was just that's just
Hmm.
what happened in New York.
Hmm.
So it's just the next step. Like, how can I make it so that like I am just working the 9 to 5 and it's okay because I'm bringing whatever I need to do and get that in there, and
Hmm.
not feel
Hmm.
guilty a lot of times. So it's an interesting sort of play right now.
Yeah, you're probably ahead of the curve. I mean, if you look at all people that are in sales, like this is such a difficult transition for everybody to make, and I think particularly for people that are in the type of job where they're working with people, they like being with people. Making this shift is really
Well, yeah, I
tough,
mean,
and
I
I
can
think
like I used to always joke around like I drink and I know things. Because at any conference, well, I mean, think about this. Any conference you go to, you go have drinks and stuff like that, and you like overhear
yeah,
things and you talk to
yeah,
people and they spill stuff out. Like you have this
right,
whole conversation. You get
right.
it over the
It's
years.
like half the
Right,
reason
half
you
the reason
go,
you
like for
go is to
the
be
the
like, right, the
gossip.
gossip, but also
Yeah,
like you get a potential client get little, it's just, but that's built in.
it's a whole
It's a whole experience. Over
experience.
the years, you
Yeah,
learn,
yeah,
and good salespeople know how to read the signs and read people, and it's a little more
yeah,
difficult to learn that
yeah, yeah,
skill
yeah, yeah,
over
yeah.
the phone and knowing what they're thinking. And then Zoom, yes, I can tell your facial expressions, but not really. Like it doesn't, this doesn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
whole body language. It's not just because I see just top of you and I have to read your face, not your
Yeah.
whole
You
body.
don't know what's going on down
Right, and
below
there's
the
like
below the
how somebody's
waist, all
leaning,
sorts of
and like
stuff
you
could be.
learn over the years, you learn those little things, and it's
Yeah,
definitely a lot harder to do. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think everybody's feeling that from, and not only sales, but look at project management, client stuff. You talk to client, everybody's
Everybody
feeling that,
is, the
right?
whole world, kids, school,
Right.
teachers,
So
I
everybody has
mean,
that. There's
it's
definitely that tone down because there's kids running around and dogs and all those things, and
Yeah.
You're not working from home. You're working from home in a pandemic. Like that is it.
Yeah.
It's different. Even
Yeah.
people
It's a
who've
whole
worked at
other ball
home,
of wax.
you still have kids around. You still have, you used to be able to
Yeah.
send them to school.
Yeah. Yeah. To be able to kick them out. Um, with the lunch club thing, are you able to target like the type of people you're connecting with so that
Hmm.
they're hopefully maybe a good lead or whatever, or is it just like not at all about
No,
leads,
you
just
can
meeting
target. You can
people
go
and it's
whatever, or you can
you can
go, I
target.
want business development, I want this, and they kind of like, or you can
Right.
pick your own. Like, there's a whole bunch of like they added a whole bunch of features to it. I like the
Nice.
the randomness of it a little bit, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah. So how do you target yours? Do you do it for biz dev
I
or
do
do you
usually for biz
just
dev, and then sometimes like 80% I try to do in Philly, and then sometimes it's global. So I've talked to a whole bunch of people all over the
Oh,
place.
okay.
It depends.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to start doing that more. I did one call and then I kind of just didn't do more of it. But I love I don't know, I just love the
Hmm.
idea of it too. Um, but so then I saw you posted about a book called Build Your Dream
Yeah.
Network, and that sounded super interesting to me. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain. I know we've already talked a lot about networking. We might have exhausted everything, but any like nuggets that you got from that book?
Um, yeah, I think the one I posted, I believe, right? Um, so everybody's like always said was like it's 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 not what you know, it's who you know, which is actually incorrect.
Hmm.
Um, my was always it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Hmm.
And this just basically added to it, which is awesome, which I am, yes, definitely trying to. It's basically the rephrasing of it is it's who knows what you know, which is kind of cool,
Oh, that's
right?
interesting.
It changes the whole thing. But for me, it was like in reality, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, um, in networking world. Um,
Hmm.
which is great. So the book is kind of cool. I know some people in the industry of networking or helping networking and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. I find it kind of interesting, really easy to read. There's a lot of stories in there. Tons of nuggets. I
Yeah.
mean, tons and tons of like, oh, well, this makes sense. That makes like a cool like I should implement that into what I do. But it's
Hmm.
not like if you take it down, it's nothing like if you watch Gary Vee, he has been saying the same thing just in his brashness of thought, where this is like
Hmm.
boiled down nicely, basically. Um,
Yeah.
for him, you kind of have to go through and read between the lines a lot of times, which is fine. I mean, it is what it
Yeah.
is. Um,
Yeah. It's like a fire hose. It's like listening to a fire hose
yes,
with him.
yes, and that energy, man. Whew. Um,
Yeah.
but I think people need to look at those kind of books and maybe Gary or just people who are good at doing this stuff and learn those lessons and really just implement them. And on the day, it's just business is such a personal thing. Like you're not gonna buy from people you just hate or just don't get along with.
Hmm.
It's silly.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I saw a comment where you were talking about your sumo heavy weigh-ins, which I think is the name you have kind of for your discovery engagements.
Yeah.
And and then I had seen the In the Ring podcast, and I'm like, dude, you guys are good at naming things.
Okay, kind of.
Like, I was like, those are good name. E-commerce Minute is also a good name. Like, I'm surprised that didn't already exist, right?
So our
And
we for some of our clients we have there's one more. For some of our clients we had these like weekly reports for a bit. I think we still do them,
uh,
and they were called weekly
uh,
knockouts. Um,
there you go. So I'm curious, like, who is it that's so good at naming stuff over there?
uh,
It's got to be somebody
it's actually
that's
all of us.
has
I
a
mean, a lot
talent
of
for that.
myself and
It's a
John.
team effort.
Yeah. The weigh-in I actually did not come up with it. I actually stole that from our um client person. She's awesome. Actually, the knockouts were used to be called weigh-ins, um, because for the longest time, so our, you know, what people look at discovery, we don't do discoveries. Um, Ours is a lot more in it. Discovery is in there, but it's a lot more to it, right? So we do,
Well, that's a smart thing to kind of rebrand it with your own term, because discovery is such a like everybody has their own thoughts about what it means and
and
stuff
people
like
don't want to
that.
pay for
And
it.
a
And
lot of times it's
right, it's
horrible.
horrible.
People don't want to
Right,
pay for
right.
it.
So we wanted to rebrand it. We just didn't have a name for it, and it took us good 6 months. We're like, what can we call it? What can we? And then they just came up with like something else for something else, and I was like, I'm taking this, and we're gonna figure out something else because this is more important. And the weigh-in thing is kind of like it's multiple things, right? It's weighing the situation, our way in, as in our ideas for the solutions for our problem, like all those things kind
Right,
of play
right.
with it, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
heavy. Like we just finished one. It was 8 weeks of like 2 to 3 phone calls per week. We record them. They're hourly.
Mm.
It's 200,
Oh, that's really
200,
cool.
it's
That's really
200
interesting.
pages of writing. So it's
Hmm.
everything. It's breaking down everything they want to do, the business, the actual roadmap, all that stuff.
Right.
That's how long we take. We don't do a day or two. That's why we had to rename it, because discovery is part of it, but there's business process, your technology process. What are
Right.
you doing with it? All those things come in, and they're big. Um, so
Yeah.
it's definitely heavy. Um,
Yeah. No, I like it because a lot of times people will come up with names that are, relate to their brand, but they're a little cheesy. But I thought that I think you guys do
Well,
a
I mean,
good
we got to
job
play
of
it off the
naming
sumo
stuff.
guy. I mean, that boy, that
Yeah.
guy's big. And even
He's a big
sumo is,
boy.
it has its point. Sumo is actually names combined, and it just became that. Um,
Is it your guys'
it's my
names
creative
that are combined?
directors and my name combined, and that had to do with we've had that name for like 20 years, just written on a whiteboard. Um, so there's a
Oh,
lot to it,
nice.
and then like the
That's
logo
cool.
came out great and all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
a great logo. It's a
but yeah,
great
so our
logo.
weigh-ins.
I was
Go
actually
ahead.
talking.
Sorry.
No, 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 no,
No,
please go
we
ahead.
were going to talk about the way, like for us, we do a lot. So documentation, there's recommendations, roadmap to MVP, business
Right,
goals. So so much stuff. But yeah, you were
right,
saying you were
right.
talking to somebody.
No, just I was talking to a buddy who does like naming projects. Like he does a lot of
Yeah.
logos and then he'll do actual naming. And I haven't like met anybody that actually did consulting for
Mhm.
specifically just for naming. So it's, they say in development there's two hard things, cache invalidation and naming things. And so
Yeah.
it's
Naming things is definitely hard. This just kind of when we started naming the company, it was easy. That was just there.
yeah,
And everything is
yeah.
after it. I mean, the logo's great. Obviously, that guy right there.
I dig it. Yeah,
I
I'm a
wish I
fan.
set up. We have a nice one on the wall. It's awesome. Um,
Nice,
so
nice.
weigh-ins, we just kind of we like it.
Yeah. Um, so I saw a post related to some community stuff, and dude named Antonio Wedral was talking about an invite-only e-commerce community
Uh-huh.
that you had responded to. I'm curious if you got an invite, because if so, I'm
I
jealous.
have not, but it was interesting what
Um,
he was trying to do. Uh,
yeah, I think so. Like, and like I saw in the post, he said like, hey, we need to bring together the e-commerce community. And this is a thing that I hear a lot related to the Magento community as well. Like I keep hearing people saying there's like a gap in the community, there's a need. And I'm trying to figure out if there's a specific need there, or if it's just something people always want and need, like it's just a human desire for more community. But I keep hearing this specific thing of like there's a gap to
no,
fill
the
in these
the problem
communities.
is like the Magento community came.
Is it just networking at the end
Mhm.
of the day?
It's not working, but
Yeah.
communities are like, oh, there's a gap in it. There's a gap in it. Like, how many times you hear that?
I hear
All
that
the
all the
time, and
time.
you're like, well, there
That's what I'm
isn't. You
saying.
just got to be in the right thing, and you can make your own. You don't have to like name it, and we have to do this because how many people's over the years
Yeah.
you've seen this happen? It happens like every year, every 6 months, somebody is like, oh, we need to build this. I'm like, all right, well, are you doing something about it? Um,
Yeah.
Magento had gonna happen, and it worked, right? That whole community is pretty big. Um, we know each other because of it. And it came at
Yeah.
the right time, at the right thing. Um, and you know, Shopify, I think, benefited from it as soon as Magento started to get bought by Adobe or all those things, because everybody else got into Shopify and BigCommerce. It's still the same community,
Hmm.
right? That community still is the same,
It's like Magento
right? But it's the
expats.
same community, right? You kind of know the same people, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
kind of went,
Yeah.
oh, we need to now do this for business purposes. We're now doing Shopify and BigCommerce and everything else, right? Um,
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
so I would say Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce have that communities there. There's no real,
Hmm.
people can poo-poo Magento or Shopify. Who cares? It happens all the time. People have their stuff. Um, but I think where the trouble comes in is all these other kind of e-commerce platforms that are coming out are having issues.
Hmm.
They're having trouble of filling that. They're like, oh, we have a great platform. I'm like, great, but you don't have a community around it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I saw
Yeah.
a post today. Somebody was like, on the forum of Magento, they're like, "Oh, Magento 2 is crap." I'm like, "Great, but it doesn't solve anything. It's not a business solution. It's not a community like it doesn't work. Like you have to have a community around it. You have to have the business around it. Otherwise, it just
Hmm.
doesn't fly. You can have the greatest
Yeah.
solution possible, but if nobody's using it, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. Community is really like a competitive moat in some
Hmm.
ways. And it's also kind of a buzzword too, at times. And it's also like this real core, like human need
Right.
that's gotten translated to digital environments, like much more so in recent
Yeah, I mean, if you look
years.
at
And it's
Magento
like,
World, who knows what's going to happen, right? Adobe's are renaming it already. Is that going to stay around? Is it going to go away? Is open source for Magento going to go away? I don't know. You know, are we banking on that? Or not banking on that? Nobody
nobody
knows,
knows.
right? I mean, somebody knows.
Yeah.
Um, but that community's still there, so they're going to move over to something else. You're not going to change our friendship for 10 years or whatever that is. I mean, most of
Right.
the first Magento crew has been around each other for a very long time. So that
Right.
doesn't change.
Right.
It's just inclusive
Yeah.
and trying to get people in. Like I kind of went away from it,
Yeah.
but
Like,
how many communities can you be in?
yeah. Yeah, like I had to at some point kind of admit to myself that because for so many years I was all about Magento.
Hmm.
I was doing it every single day. I was doing the podcast. I wanted to learn everything about it. And then at some point I had to admit to myself that I wasn't necessarily that interested in some aspects of the technology, whatever. But the community, right? These
Hmm.
relationships are still very interesting to me, right? And everybody is moving in different directions, doing different things. You can talk to somebody about sales, you can talk to somebody about being a dad or
Right.
whatever, or community more broadly. And like, yeah, for me, the relationships are kind of
Right.
what
But
stick
that's
around.
but
I'm
that's what
trying
the
to,
community needs, right? It's the relationships that you
that
have,
is
right?
that's the core of it.
Forcing it to be that, it just doesn't, you know. You can kind of do, um maybe this is the wrong word, but like a forced serendipity. But that's what
Mm.
conferences are, right?
And that's what's cool about Lunch Club. It's like the closest
To the
thing to
closest
this
thing,
like
right? And
forced.
it doesn't have to be. You make your own community at the end of the day. Like those, like I love the idea he's trying to do it, or anybody's trying to do it. But you make your own
Mhm.
community. Like,
You make your
hey,
own,
at
yeah.
some point, like when you're younger, sure, you try to belong somewhere. But the more you get older, you're like, no, I want to slow down things and make them simpler. And
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't need to go through
Yeah.
50,000 things because it makes no sense anymore. And there's a whole bunch of those kind
I
of things.
think I think some of what people want is they want like this broad like single community that like everybody's a part, like let's all get on the same page, let's like fill all those gaps with like one community to
Yeah, and it
fulfill them
doesn't work.
all. But like at the end of at the end of I think there is sort of this human desire for that, but at the end of the day it's like everybody has to create their own
Hmm.
community. Communities overlap in different
Yeah,
ways and they change,
the best one is to like, if the best sort of look for this is the beauty of digital, right? I've belonged to Bureau forever. Love it. It's a whole bunch of agencies. It's agencies from one person to
Oh
100,
yeah, you were
200,
telling me
right?
about that.
Plenty of e-commerce people are in there now. Um, yeah,
And they share really transparently and stuff like
as
that.
owners when you go to the conferences. So there's a lot to it, right? So there's owners cams, there's PM cams now, biz dev cams, stuff like that. So the bureau is the overarching, right? But if you've been around long enough around it, you've been to NORCamp or Summit or stuff like that, and all of a sudden you have these groups that form, and then within those groups, other groups form. But end of the day, it's all
Hmm.
up into this bigger stuff. So it's not just one huge thing; it's all these little things that are attached to
Right.
something, right? But like if you
Right.
look at the Slack
Right.
community, like you can ask questions and go back and forth. You kind of have friends and you've been to things together, and like all of a sudden that becomes a community within a community within a like
Right.
it's a bigger thing.
Right.
Um, which what
Right. That's
which
kind of
what
the nature.
Magento kind of had too, right? You had this whole overarching because we're all, oh, this is a platform you want to see that, but then like people split off. We're agency here, we're developers, we're this, and you have these little groups that all of a sudden go into a bigger thing, right?
Fracturings.
But then it goes into a bigger
Hmm.
thing, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so those are two of the great examples of that, but that's just natural. And I think
Hmm.
forcing into something bigger, that's not going to ever work because I still don't know
Yeah.
like you and I probably know a lot of e-commerce agencies over the years.
Yeah.
We're like
Yeah.
scratching the surface. I always stumble on somebody. I'm like,
Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
heard of you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
you,
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention, like, I'm trying to better understand the Shopify ecosystem, and I've been, meeting people, connecting with people a little bit more, and I feel like I don't know the first thing about the Shopify
right?
ecosystem. But there is a lot of similarities, and even as I'm talking to people about the technical challenges that need to get solved, like even though it's a fundamentally very different thing with SaaS versus open source, there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
there's a
there's
lot of
pearls. There's we can talk in nausea at all these things from the technical perspective, and but, to us, it's whatever's the best solution for the client at the time with their budget. That's it. How can we work
yeah.
that with their team?
Do you guys do a good amount of Shopify? Like I know you said like the simple, like it's like with Shopify, it's like you've got the simple, like somebody could knock it out in a day, and then you've got like you can get your hands dirty doing some pretty heavy lifting with Plus and
Yeah,
integrations and stuff like
yeah, we
that.
do custom stuff and integrations and some crazy
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, that's us. We go
yeah,
we're at the
yeah,
upscale side. Um,
yeah.
haven't touched a big commerce in a very long time, although we're still a partner. Um, it's just I know. Ironically, we're a Shopify Plus partner too, but not a Magento
Nice.
partner. Um,
It's like you said. It's like you said. The Magento community spilling over
It's you know
into
what we've been
these
so the funny
other.
thing for us with Shopify Plus, we were one of the few Magento shops where they invited us to look at when they were starting to build Shopify Plus. It was
Oh,
us,
nice.
Groove, Cora. I think that was it. It was really, really tiny. When Plus wasn't even that thing. Like they were like, we want to build this thing. We don't know what to call it yet. Like they had no name for it. This was like 2 years before Plus like appeared. Um,
Hmm.
so we
Hmm.
knew about it a long, long time ago. I just, for us, we're such a different animal that we were 10 years ago. It's so weird. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
it just changed a lot.
And like everybody has, right?
Yeah.
That's the
I mean, look how
fascinating
many
thing is
agencies
like
from our
there.
community have been bought and merged and
Right,
all
right,
over the place.
right, right, right. And from the companies mergers, acquisitions, individuals kind of
Hmm.
evolving, like everything is like shifted, but then there's these common bonds that, hopefully, stay and kind of, keep people
Yeah,
connected.
yeah. I mean, I was just in
Um,
my last conference was in South Carolina. Got to catch up with Kevin. Got to catch up with Ben.
nice.
That was funny. I just happened to be at something down there, and I caught up, had breakfast with Ben and Tracy, which was awesome, and then caught up with Kevin. Like that was just interesting in the world. I mean, how many people came out of that world?
Yeah, yeah. South Carolina is a hot spot. I think I saw Kevin tweet that he's going to start building a brand like an ecom brand,
Yeah, he's
which I
been
thought
talking
was
about
cool.
it. He just kind of went, all right, I sold the company, now what? So that's always tricky.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, which is
yeah.
great. I mean, you know, we've had those talks, but I'm okay.
It's cool. Yeah. Um, okay, so I saw you posted about nostalgic brands being brought back. There's something I've heard Gary Vee talk
Yeah,
about. I'm definitely a believer. I actually just yesterday I was looking at my buddy's Twitter page and I saw a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hat
nice,
like in a picture,
nice.
and I just like there's this like I didn't even recognize it at the time until today, but there's this immediate connection to those
Yep.
brands. So I'm curious, like, what are some nostalgic brands that, you would like to see revived or you have seen revived,
So
um,
like,
or that you think would work?
it's just all over the place. I mean, that's the nostalgia of stuff is crazy. And it's always been crazy. But not from brand's perspective, but have you watched Cobra Kai yet?
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Right?
great
Like,
one. That's a
I was like,
great
oh my
one.
God.
That's definitely a
I mean, that's
brand.
a huge brand, right? It's a nice twist.
It's
I'm like,
amazing the way they
this is
did
so
it.
good.
Yeah. It is really
Yeah, and then
good.
like, what else is out there? Well, Bill and Ted is. I haven't seen it yet. See the Bill and Ted's whatever the adventure. It's out.
Oh, I see. I think I saw. Yeah, I think I saw. I don't even know if I've seen a trailer for that one, but I saw some reference to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
and Keanu Reeves is in it,
yeah, it's both
right?
the same guys.
Yeah, same
Same
two
two
guys. I don't
guys.
even remember the other dude's
And
name,
like they're
but
doing another
yeah.
Matrix. I know we just went into movie world, but uh,
Right, we've got deep into movie world.
I mean nostalgia is like anything. I'm a little tricky about that. Like for me, from the business perspective, nostalgia is great. I'm not a collector of anything. Like I don't play game, never did. That's just not my
Same.
thing.
Well, I played games when I was like a kid, but
Yeah, that's never been up right. We do a lot of work for game companies, so that's always interesting. We have a side
mm,
project that's a kids blog type thing. If you saw half of my office right now, it's all toys and books. Which is
hmm
kind of funny because there's nothing here, but like back here, it's yeah, a lot of things. Um, so we have, kind of around it all the time. Um, but I know that business is great. And sports cards are coming back like crazy. Never been into them, but I
right,
get the business of them.
right,
Just,
right,
you,
right.
you basically have
There
these
was this
40, 50-year-olds that grew up and have money,
yeah,
and what are you going to do with it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's this really cool park nearby. It's the biggest park I've ever seen. It has like a race car course. It has like a miniature city with like all the local businesses, and it's
Yeah.
gigantic. It has a sand and a water area. But anyways, somebody told me that the guy who funded it is this baseball player named Nolan
Yeah.
Ryan, who I used to have his baseball card when I was a
All
kid.
right. Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I thought that was wild, and he funded it. But it's like the Disneyland of parks. It's insane.
I mean,
It's
Central
like
Park is
my
kind of like
kids
that.
go crazy.
Um,
Well, Central Park is Central Park.
yeah.
Yeah,
Here
it's
in
a
Philly, I
good
mean,
sized
our
park.
park is humongous, and there's tons of it in it. And yes, we have a zoo in it too. Um, we
Yeah,
have a proper zoo, not just a little tiny zoo.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, like I mean, there's definitely like San Diego had a great park, like a really big park, but like as far as like a single place that's just for kids to like some parks are big, but there's like cars can drive through them, and there's different
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sections to them. But as far as just like
One.
a single
Yeah.
place just for kids,
Yeah.
like yeah, it's gigantic, it's wild. Um,
Nice.
but anyways, so last question for you. I saw you'd posted about like losing bids because you refused to give a price for like an
Hmm.
RFP,
Hmm.
right? And this is something I think about a lot because I think software estimation is kind of
Silly.
almost
Yeah.
impossible. It's silly. And I think we had talked before, and you guys maybe had like a retainer
Mhm.
only policy kind of a thing. I don't know if that's still the
Mhm.
case, but this is one of those things that's difficult for many agencies to do. And like, I'm curious, how you navigate that, because I think it's important to say no. Like, so many agencies have a hard time saying no, or it's a
Mhm.
tough thing to do. You don't want to lose a potential customer or an existing customer. So like, how do you guys
Well, there's a whole bunch
navigate
of
that?
ways in the beginning. Like you can actually just call up and people are like, "Listen, we don't do bids. This is an RFP." It's just like problem. We just don't do them. Here's how we.
Just across
Yeah,
the
we're like,
boards.
this is how we work, and we can work into this, and we can do this. Or, I mean, we've bidded on RFPs with just a weigh in pricing. Because I just don't believe you can have a conversation for an hour and give it a price. You just can't.
Yeah.
I don't care where it
Even
is.
10
I don't care what it
hours.
is. It's just
Like,
you
yeah.
cannot do this. And our industry, I always compare it to actual building of buildings. That's all it is. It happens to be online. It's as pricey and it's as complex, and people still don't believe it. It's like, oh, it's just online. RFPs are hard. Now in government and stuff like that, you still have to do them. I get that, but in our world, I mean, it's just silly. Um, so we
Hmm.
come up with sometimes. We don't give prices because you can't. Our stipulation is going through our way in because that's where it's better. It's always going to give you a better price, a better sort of product. Um, anybody that does this,
And you're going to get some value out of that
yeah,
process, ideally.
humongous
Even if you
value.
go somewhere else, you're going to get a ton of
Exactly. I
value.
mean, going somewhere else, you can take it with you and then go somewhere else, but um, it's probably better for us to do it anyway. It's faster. And then we actually
Yeah.
do it on retainer. Now, our retainers are very specific. We actually, a long time ago, we just threw numbers at the wall. We actually now know how we do this. We actually built a whole bunch of tools for it. It's for our whole team, how fast we work. There's analytics. Wow, I couldn't even say that today. There's actual numbers behind it. It's not per hour, but there's numbers to it. We track everything, and it's about continuous improvement, how we work. We have dashboards for this stuff. It goes against how we like those things, so we know what to do with it. Um,
Hmm.
and our retainer are monthly. We have contracts that are longer than that, and it's a monthly price in the beginning of the month to work for on it. Because we get
Right.
heavily involved with clients. We just don't like deliver you, here you go. We actually work with you every day. So for us, we like
Yeah.
having internal teams with clients, that they have internal teams so we can work with them. It's making them better, making them more efficient. That's our job. And then building
Yeah.
things with them. So that's kind of how
Yeah.
we go around that a little bit. Hard to sell the way we do stuff, but I'm okay with it, because once you get it
Hmm.
and you have the comparison, especially with people who worked with hourly type things or projects, they get it. They're like, oh my god, this is great. It works.
Yeah.
Um, so you have this.
And then you're working with the right type of client
I mean, think
that
about this.
that
If you're doing the
understands the
same kind of
importance of it.
work, our retainers go up, sometimes down a little bit. But if you're still on state, you kind of know what your year for expenditure of your consulting looks like, right? It's a fixed cost
Yeah.
all of a sudden, um, which makes it more fun. But it's also easier for taking the actual conversation every single month or every project, right? We're not siloed. Every single client we walked into, we get into put into other departments because it's just easy. They're like, oh, we have this.
Hmm.
Can you? I'm like, yeah, well, this is going to cost you a little more, but here's what we do. We're not siloed to
Hmm.
just that project.
Hmm.
It lets
Hmm.
us kind of evolve and work with the client and be in a true partnership with them.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that's the way to do it. Bart, thank you, my friend. It's been fun catching
Yep.
up. Where's the best place for people to find you
All
online?
online things, either Sumo Heavy or
MySpace.
MySpace. Yes,
What are
Friendster,
we what,
Friendster,
what are we working with?
Friendster.
Friendster.
Send me letters. That'd be great. Bart Mroz on just about everything. The usuals. Not hard to find.
The huge.
Mhm.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks, man. I will talk to you very soon.
Sure.
See how I can finish.